Okay, so model number 6 is this class 4 saddle area. So designing a tooth-borne denture for this, incorporate quite a bit of metal in the mouth. So starting off with our saddle area, we'd have our saddle area replacing those two anterior central incisors, and then really we want the metalwork to just come onto the laterals very slightly, just to provide some support. And then we're going to need some support back here in the mouth. So really I'd be looking at using the sixers, so probably putting occlusal rests on the medial, or you could go distal of the sixers, depending. You need the opposing model to see which is going to be the most favourable, but something like this. So that's our support. And then retention, well, this is a case where on the surveyor we want to be trying to get a path of insertion to make this as aesthetic as possible, so hopefully slotting down the long axis of these lateral incisors, so we get the denture butting up to these teeth as nicely as possible. So we'd want to set our path of insertion on the surveyor and record that onto the model for the technician, and at the same time survey the teeth that we're going to clasp relative to the path of displacement and path of insertion, and check to make sure that we can get our clasp arms in an appropriate amount of undercut. So we could put our clasp arms something like this, or we could wrap around from the plate aspect and go all the way around if we wanted to, which would probably be better actually, because we get some, keep the reciprocation incorporated into the occlusally approaching ring clasp, circumferential clasp, same thing like so. So it starts here, wraps around the tooth and engages just there, and then the gingival tissues can be kept free. And then we need to connect this up with a connector that's as hygienic as possible, so keep it as minimal and thin as possible, so something like this. And connect it all together so it's nice and rigid. And again, the bracing would tend to look after itself in this situation. This is a case where you can consider indirect retention as well. So when this is being displaced, the denture is going to rotate about the clasp tips here. So everything behind the clasp tips would provide indirect retention. So you could incorporate distal rests to provide the indirect retention, or you could extend the connector distal to the clasp tips, and they will provide indirect retention. Either way, so this is an example of a framework that's been designed for model number 6. You can see it's a lot of metal work, isn't it, just to replace these two teeth. I think I'd sooner have some Maryland bridges or an implant or something rather than that partial denture. But anyway, these are made. They're not particularly pretty, but you know, these anterior saddles are sometimes attached to a tooth supported denture such as this. You can see the metalwork just coming onto the cingulum of these teeth just here. Okay, and this particular design, these are providing the indirect retention for these clasp tips. Not particularly effective because the clasp tips are very close to them, but there's a nod to it anyway there. If we're doing a mucosa borne design, then it'd be something like a simple spoon denture or a modified spoon denture. So a spoon denture just sits in the palate like so, and we have a peripheral dam cut all the way around, and we get some suction up onto the palate. If we want to go any further, we could incorporate some acrylic work up onto these abutment teeth just to get some more retention and bracing, a little bit of support as well if we come up above the survey line like this, and that's a modified spoon denture. Very simple. And we could also incorporate some clasps. It depends really how long this is going to be used for. These tend to be just for a temporary, just as a temporary device. This acrylic should really come up here a bit further and up onto here. Okay, so that's model number 6. Not ideal for a partial denture really, but sometimes we need to.